So let's take a minute and let's talk about what pressed pigments are. First glance, these just look like your run-of-the-mill eyeshadows, but they're actually more than that. So while these can certainly be used as eyeshadows, these are ultra saturated powders that hold a lot of versatility, and you can use them for not only eyeshadow, but you can use them for things like eyeliner, lip liner, blush, filling in your eyebrows, toner, bronzer, a lip color. The sky's kind of the limit on how and where you use these shades. Now, a few tips and tricks that are going to be really helpful when it comes to using the pressed pigments. The first one is to make sure you're using a really good quality primer underneath any of the areas that you're using one of the pressed pigments. Because these are so highly saturated, you want to make sure there is something on your skin that kind of creates a bit of a barrier between your skin and the pressed pigment, which is what the primer is for, because that way you will be able to take this off really smooth, really easy, without leaving behind any sort of color or staining on your skin. Now, that being said, these three shades right here, there's Ladybug, Guava, and Daze. These three shades, you're actually gonna wanna avoid using them around your eyes, even when you are using a primer, just because they are prone to stain. So again, it's these three shades, Ladybug, Guava, and Daze, but all the rest of them are absolutely fine to use as eyeshadows. But these three shades, these are gonna be really good for blushes and lip colors and things like that. My next piece of advice when it comes to using the pressed pigments is to make sure that you start with less product initially. You can always add more, but because they are so saturated, you're gonna get a lot of color payout with very little product. So it's better to start with a little bit and then add to it if you want more depth, as opposed to starting in really heavy-handed and then ending up with too much and kind of messing up the whole look. The right tools are also going to be essential when it comes to getting the look that you're wanting with your pressed pigments. If you're looking for a lighter and softer look, go with a brush that has longer and more wispy bristles. If you want to pack on the pigment for a bolder look, go with a brush that has shorter bristles and is more dense in nature. And then of course, if you're wanting a little bit more of a precise application, make sure you have a brush that is a little bit more narrow and has a little bit more of that point or flat end or something that's gonna allow you to distribute the color in the exact location that you're wanting to. Now, speaking of a more precise application, if you're wanting to use the pressed pigments for an eyeliner or a lip liner or something like that, something that you can do to create a little bit more of that sleek line is to either use a setting spray or some sort of a balm on the end of the brush first before pressing into the pressed pigment, and that will help to kind of make it glide and make it nice and crisp and give you a really precise and like smooth application. Now, when it comes to cleaning your brushes after using a pressed pigment, Seint has two different brush cleaners. They have a spray, which is excellent for kind of in between uses, but if you want to get rid of the stain that the pressed pigments might leave on the bristles, use Seint's brush soap, because that will remove the color completely and get you back to kind of that baseline white that the bristles have originally. My last tip or piece of advice when it comes to using pressed pigments is just have fun with them. Play around with the colors, play around with the application, where you're placing them, what colors you're using, how you're combining the shades. You will be surprised at what you're able to come up with when you're using these different shades. There are some absolutely stunning combinations and some really cool ways that you can incorporate these into your everyday makeup routine.